I'm just going to put you on mute, guys, okay, so that when you want to say something, please unmute yourselves. All right, so at Ois Beis. So the basic question here is, I should really put on Facebook. Just give me 1 second. No, we'll just leave it like this. So the basic question here is, there seems to be an inherent contradiction with respect to whether mitzvahs are forever or not. So let's begin again, the basic problem. So V'yesh Levayir, it's Ois Beis, chapter 2. So now we're going to explain, bottom line is going to be that they are eternal. And the quote is, halachas, in the brackets there, this is from the Rambam, from the Gemara, the halachas, the laws of the oral law are never end, are eternal. You have to understand, we have several problems on this statement. What does it mean they're forever? Number one, it's known, shaklal, the principle that we have, shalacha kebeis Hillel, the law is like Beis Hillel. The law is that when there's a dispute between Hillel and Shammai, we do not regard Shammai's view. It's not taught as a practical ruling. So this, that we only follow Hillel, is it's only nowadays. But in the future, the law will be like Beis Shammai, in brackets. How will this happen? So elsewhere, we've explained, Sheshini halacha year, the change of ruling will be, why, how? The Supreme Court that will then, that will turn to Jerusalem and reconvene the Sanhedrin, so they're going to re-examine the whole case. All of these cases they argue. They'll vote. And then they'll say, you know what? Now like Beis Shammai. In other words, even the principle that led to the ruling that it's like Hillel remains. It's always a majority. In the past, the majority ruled in Hillel's favor. Now the majority will rule in Shammai's favor. And the reason will be because in an elevated world, when Mashiach comes, we can, and it's appropriate to observe all of these laws where they argue on the more elevated level, like Shammai, like we learned at length in our previous subject matter, that Shammai relates to everything at its source, the potential. It's a much higher level. It's a heavenly level. We'll be ready for that. But the bottom line is, there's a change in the law. We understand, it's justified, but how will the sages, the court will now rule according to the house of Shammai, but at the end of the day, it's the halacha that we've been observing will no longer be. You won't light the menorah, as Hillel says, and all the other disputes that they had. So the question, our question is, in italics, the Yevat Lasid Lavai, there will be neutralized, nullified, or ended. Many laws we're observing today. Kol halachas, all the laws which were ruled, and in brackets here, it's Kol Gabe Chiburi Shel Rambam. The Rambam, which this is based on, Maimonides, his set of rules, that whole Mishnah Torah is always according to Hillel. In all the cases they argue, with few exceptions. Kedas Beis Hillel. Shalachas Edlu Yevatlo, these laws will be nullified. Will be in their place. If Sukkah halachas chadashis, new laws, Kedas Beis Shammai, like the laws like Beis Shammai. So the question is a change. That's not such a huge question. That's such a huge question because that can be answered by saying that the law doesn't change. We're still going to light a menorah. The law remains this way or that way. So it's just, a detail within the practicality. Everybody agrees you light a menorah every night of Hanukkah. You light candles. How do you light it? So that's not considered a change of a halacha, one might defend and argue, because the general halacha subject matter remains. We're not lighting the menorah anymore. We're not putting on tefillin, whatever case they argue. We're just going to do it in a different way. So that isn't such a strong question. But now I want you to turn the page and now to go to Daled. We're going to skip a bit because we did it last week. Let's go to Dalet. You see where chapter Dalet is? V'yuven. What has it? You're all muted, so I can't tell. If anybody doesn't have the text, I can send it to you. So v'yuven behektem hadiyuk. So first, just to review something. For sure, there's no dispute that all of the teachings and instructions of the prophets, we're not going to be studying them. In the Messianic era, the Nevi'im and Ksuvim become obsolete. There's no dispute on the matter. Only the 5 books of the Torah are for eternal. And the reason is very simple. If you just look at Tehillim and all of it, it's all supplication and all dealing with exile and problems and so on. And we're over that. So the message of the prophets, inspiration, the exhortations to remain loyal are no longer necessary. We're inspired. The world is at peace. God's revealed. And we don't need all of Nevi'im and Ksuvim. The only exception, again, is the Megillah and all of the laws, which is what we're dealing with now, the eternity of all of the laws. But just to clarify, there is some aspect that becomes no longer relevant. It's just like, we get an example, like lighting a candle when the sun is shining brightly outside. You don't even see the light that the candle contributes. It doesn't. It's overwhelmed completely by the light of the sun. So similarly, all of the exhortations and inspiration in Tehillim and the works of the prophets dealing with the ups and downs and challenges of their time, we don't need that anymore. We're in a much more elevated state. So that's no question. But what is eternal are the 5 books of the Torah and all of the halachas. Now, mind you, the 5 books of the Torah also, we need to understand, and this is going to be our question, because there are many laws there that you think you wouldn't need. Laws that only exist because we have an evil inclination, so we have to be told not to and yes to. So this will all be explained. Why are all 613 laws, commandments, all eternal? So we'll see. That's what this whole point is going to explain. So to explore this whole thing, to understand it, we're going, again, chapter 4. Let's look at chapter 4. First, we'll have to introduce the Talmudic quote, which on the surface appears to contradict what we're saying all the time now from the Rambam and from elsewhere in the Talmud, that the halachas are forever. And yet, look what it says. Mitzvos beteilus lasid lava. The Gemara says that the mitzvahs are ended and are nullified in the future. Now, right there, it seems like a contradiction. You say the halachas are forever, but the mitzvahs are not. It's an outright contradiction. So this is going to be explained, but let's explore the source of this. What does the Gemara say? Gemara says, "Beged shavad by kilayim." Again, a garment. It was a linen garment, and a piece of woolen thread got lost in it, and you can't find it. That's shatnez. So a person can't wear it because until he removes the woolen thread, it's forbidden. However, the Gemara says, but you can make shrouds for the dead. The dead can be buried in shatnez. Amar Rabbi Yosef, this forbidden mixture of woolen and linen. Amar Rabbi Yosef, so Rabbi Yosef says, from this law, this teaching, which is a braisa, a very early teaching of our sages, Rabbi Yosef deduced, Zoysim matters, mitzvahs betelis lasid lava. We see that there's no mitzvahs in the future because we're burying the dead in kilayim, in shatnez. Amalei Abaye said back to Rabbi Yosef, V'temer Avdimi, and some said, Avdimi responded to Rabbi Yosef and said, V'omar Rabbi Mani, Omar Rabbi Yanai. Rabbi Mani said the name of Rabbi Yanai, qualifying this law about burying the dead in shatnez. Leishonu ela lesafdoi. We only said that you can bury him in shrouds for the eulogy, but not to bury him. Avalakayvri also, but to bury him, he'd have to be buried in pure linen shrouds, no even possibility of any thread of wool. However, the Gemara continues. Amalei, however, Rabbi Yosef responded, that's your opinion. But there's another opinion. Rabbi Yochanan was a great authority. Rabbi Yochanan taught, however, on this braisa, this primary teaching, that's not just limited to the funeral service, the eulogy. Afilu l'koivre, can even bury it. And he continued, Rabbi Yochanan the Tamei, Rabbi Yochanan follows according to his reasoning. Rabbi Yochanan said, what's the meaning of the in Tehillim where it says, Ba'mesim chavshi, the dead are free. What are they free of? It says Rabbi Yochanan, Kivin shemes adam, when the person dies, nasa chavshi min mitzvahs, he's free of mitzvahs. So end of conclusion, what there appears is a dispute between Rabbi Yosef's understanding of the Braisa and Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yosef says, and he quoted a source, Rabbi Yosef says that if you can bury a person in shrouds, unqualified, even, Rabbi Yochanan says, you can even bury him. It's Rabbi Yochanan. You can even bury him because Rabbi Yochanan says that there is no mitzvahs. In the future, therefore, no problem. That's the conclusion of Rabbi Yochanan's view. That's the clear view. And there's another view that says you can only eulogize him but not bury him. But we're interested now in Rabbi Yochanan, and you'll see why. Rabbi Yochanan, conclusion of this whole discussion, as you just heard, was he holds it's unqualified. Bury a person in shrouds of shatnez, it's okay even to bury him. And what's the proof he brings? Because the dead are free of mitzvahs. Now, we don't understand his proof. That's the question we're going to be. You have to understand. The l'chayr tamur, it's strange. We need to understand. Time of Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yochanan's reasoning, what did he say? Given shemes adam, when a person dies, nasa chavshim and mitzvahs is free of mitzvahs. Excuse me, that's only good while he's dead. But what happens when he gets up? Mahani shekol zman shumes, that we understand, because as long as he's buried, he's ein olav mishum isukilayim, he's not transgressing the prohibition of wearing wool and linen because he's dead. But our consideration is, but what happens when he gets up? This doesn't help for the time when he gets up. He's going to stand up at his clothing. That he was buried. Then the prohibition of kalayim will surely be applicable. The kivin shegenian, and that's the case. Ein azman, the time is Rabbi Yochanan's answer that you can bury him. Why? Because the dead are free. Doesn't answer the problem. That's only shaykh lazman shebeit tzadich l'time is Rabbi Yosef. That's only with respect to the reason that Rabbi Yosef said shemitzvahs betelis lasad lavai, that mitzvahs nullified in the future. So all we know is the future just simply means while you're dead. You don't, obviously there's no mitzvahs. But when you get up, so the simple question is this. Rabbi Yochanan said, to summarize the question, Rabbi Yochanan said, you can even bury him because the dead are free of mitzvahs. But when when he gets up, he's not dead anymore. So how is he invoking the dead of free of mitzvahs to justify burying him in shatnez when in the future he's going to get up and not be dead anymore? So we don't understand his reasoning. If Rabbi Yochanan would say you can bury him in shrouds because there's never going to be mitzvahs again, ever, it's all over. Even in the future when the dead are revived, you understand? But the reason he gives is the dead, but we're talking about when the dead are revived. So what do you say? So we don't understand Rabbi Yochanan's reasoning. And
the first thing that happens when he gets revived is that he is breaking halacha because he has shatnez on.
Exactly, that's our question. So the fact that we can bury him in shatnez and while he's dead, not a problem. But how do we allow him to bury him in dead when he's going to be transgressing, as you say, as soon as he gets up? And to say it's okay because the dead are free of mitzvahs, that's only lasts till he gets up. When he gets up, he's transgressing. So Rabbi Yochanan contradicts himself. Let's get the question very clear. He says, you can bury him in shatnez because the dead don't keep mitzvahs. Hello? That's while he's dead. But when he gets up, he's not dead. Then he's obligated. The dead, he's not dead anymore. So what are you saying? Dead don't have mitzvahs. Our issue is not the death. Our question is, what happens when he gets up? So Rabbi Yochanan's mystifying. What does he mean? He says it's okay because the dead don't need. But the whole question is about the revival of the dead. Our bigger problem is, here's the real problem. Rabbi Yochanan contradicts himself outright. How so? And the main question is, look at this question here. I want you to get this very clearly. In the tractate Sanhedrin, when the Gemara deals with the whole subject, the revival of the dead, there it says, incredibly, Omar Rabbi Yochanan said, where is there a hint in the 5 books of the Torah for the future revival of the dead? There's several. One of them is this. When God instructs us with respect to Truma, which is unspecified amount of produce that the Israelite farmer has to give to the Kohen, the Torah says, when Esata Memenu as Trumas Hashem, you shall give this offering La'aron HaKohen to Aaron HaKohen. Hello, there weren't farmers in the desert. In the desert, no Kohen got Truma. It's all given from produce that grows. Those laws only applied once they went into Israel. The Torah says, give it to Aaron. So Rabbi Yochanan continues, Aaron lives forever. Did he go into Israel with them? That the Torah should say, give him the Truma? He died in the desert. He never entered to Israel. That Truma, these grain elevated gifts or portions should be given to him. And the Torah says, give it to him. It's a tremendous hint. But the Torah is hinting one day he'll be revived. And then, Yidden will give him Truma. So what do we see? We see black and white. Rabbi Yochanan is teaching this. Rabbi Yochanan holds, it's very clear that there will be mitzvahs in the future. Example, Truma. We'll be observing the mitzvah of Truma once the dead revive. So, the Eich, Omar, Rabbi Yochanan, how does Rabbi Yochanan allow us to bury a Jew in forbidden mixture of shatnez? When he gets up in his clothes, he'll be wearing kilayim. So this is really the very powerful question. The one we have to remember, it's an absolute contradiction. He says very clearly, there will be mitzvahs when the dead revive, which is why then, that's the Torah hints to it, one day you will give Aaron his truma. So how do you, Rabbi Yochanan, allow it to be buried, not just eulogized, but buried in shatnez? This poor Jew, when the dead revive, he's transgressing. So you should have insisted that no, the dead have to be buried in kosher shrouds, pure linen, without any wool. And if a piece of wool gets lost in it and you can't extract it, you can't use it. Yet he says you can. Why? Now we're going to get to the answer. We're completely mystified because we have a contradiction in Rabbi Yochanan outright. Bury him in shrouds, but there'll be mitzvahs. What's going on? Questions clear? That's the basic question. Hey, chapter 5. Now we're going to get the essence of the answer. It's beautiful, very deep, and to be elaborated. Rabbi Yochanan goes according to his reasoning, and he said, what did he say? He allowed the person to be buried in the shrouds. Kivin shemeis, what were the words that he used? Nasa odom chavshi min mitzvahs. The person is free from mitzvahs. So this statement, if you understand what it means, and we're going to analyze it, this also explains that mitzvahs are nullified in the future, and yet we'll still be giving truma to Aaron. What? Nullified? Yes, no. What's going on? Here we go. Look at the language here. Mitzvahs means commandments. Commandments are nullified in the future. What does that mean? In terms of being commanded, no need to be commanded. I'm going to give you the essence of the answer, not in the text so that you can follow the text. It's quite wordy and elaborate. Here is the resolution to what appears to be the contradiction. Here's the contradiction. In one place, mitzvahs are nullified. In another place, halachas are forever. What's going on? Answer. Mitzvah means the need to command. So there's God, there's me, and I've got to be commanded to do it because if he doesn't command me, I don't know. And moreover, I need to be commanded because I may not. So I've got to accept by choice Hashem's commandment. In the future era, Tchias HaMesim, revival of the dead, no Yetzer Hara, completely surrender to God. There's no need to tell me. We will do the mitzvahs naturally and spontaneously. This is the core of the answer. The halachas will continue to be observed without the need for the mitzvah, which means commandment. Now, I still haven't really answered. So why are we burying the guy in Shatnez? What's going to happen the moment of the revival of the dead? So that's a little mystery. I'm going to tell you that the answer to that in a moment. But I hope that we have grasped now the core essence of the answer in the resolution between these contradictory statements. Mitzvahs will no longer be, halachas will be forever. Answer, we'll do it all. We won't need to be told. The commandment, which implies there's me, there's God, and we're connected by the commandment, no need, we're one. His will is my will naturally. It's no longer a mitzvah, a commandment. It's something I naturally do. Maybe that's even clearer. We will naturally and spontaneously observe mitzvahs, all of them, at the appropriate time. It'll come without even a choice. Oh, I got to do this. I could do something else. The body, the soul just does it. Completely one with, this is God's will. It's my will. And there's no resistance in me to that will. In other words, it's no longer a choice. Because the choice is when we have good and bad, ego, not ego, no bad, then we will naturally observe. That's the core answer here. So the halacha will remain. We'll do it. The mitzvah, the need to command it, no longer. Now, what about Shammai and Hillel? Which way we got to do it? How do you bury the guy in shrouds? This is yet to be explained. But I want us first to understand that core. Is that kind of clear, that distinction? Mitzvahs no, halacha yes. We're clear? You need a nod of the head. If not, I'll explain it again. I'll try.
Rabbi, you're explaining mitzvahs, well, but you're not explaining the halacha part. Why do you need halacha in Tchias HaMesim?
We don't need halacha. Halacha means it will be observed. Halacha means the practicality of the mitzvah. By Tchias HaMesim, everyone's going to put on tefillin, give truma, all of the mitzvahs. We're going to do them all. What's no longer going to be? It will no longer have to be a commandment. We will naturally observe the halacha without being commanded. Mitzvah means commanded. It'll be spontaneous and natural. Now it's a commandment. Commandment means it's a choice. You could do it or not do it. You're commanded, you accept it, you do it. There's no need to command then, because it would be one inseparable from God. Hashem wants it, we'll naturally do it. You don't have to be commanded to breathe. No one has to be commanded, breathe. Why? Because it's natural and instinctual, it's a life. You don't even think about it, you breathe. So too, all the mitzvahs in the future, all the halachas will be observed. The halacha will be, but it'll be natural and spontaneous, no longer a question of choice or commandment. That aspect, that component, no longer. Clear? Is that clear now? Dave?
Yes, Rabbi.
Good. Are we all clear? Except like breathing. All mitzvahs, all of them, all the 613 commandments, etc., will be like breathing. Not a commandment, not a choice, not, oh, I have to do something now. I better stop what I'm doing. I'm committed. I'm going to do this. I'm a shomer Shabbos. I put on film, and it's always a choice. You don't have to. It's a commandment if you've chosen to observe. That's now. But then, no, it's not a commandment anymore. There's no choice anymore. Every Jew, no Yetzer Hara, no evil inclination, the whole world refined and elevated, and we're so one with God that it'll be like breathing. We will naturally observe all of the laws at the appropriate time and place, whatever they happen to be. No need for the whole commandment and my acceptance. Because that implies there's a God, there's me, there's a commandment, and I do or I don't. I have a choice right? Oh, I have free choice because we're separate. In my mind, I don't feel God. So I'd accept this, not accept it. But then the gap closes, we fuse, become one. Hashem wants, I do. I'm not even thinking, it's just natural. I feel it. Again, example like breathing. You don't have to make, I better breathe. If I don't breathe, I'm going to die. You don't have to make that choice. You just do. Mitzvos will be like breathing. We're clear? So are we going to do more? Yeah.
They're gonna have to come to us.
What do you mean by come?
Well, we're struggling now as it is with all the mitzvahs, but there's so many more that we don't do because the temple is not there.
Yeah, so the conditions we'll be able to do all of them, but not struggle. There's no struggle, no mitzvah anymore. Just the pure and natural, spontaneous observance. No choice, no struggle. And all the conditions will be ripe, as you say, to be able to observe all of them. The whole world, no longer any resistance, temple, everything, peace, everything, every impediment removed, only godliness revealed, a beautiful world. As we're learning now in today's year, the 11th of Shvat, Bosi Legani Achoisi Kala. The world's going to be God's bridal chamber, God's garden of delight, the whole world. So we will naturally observe all of his will without the need to command, not as a commandment, not a mitzvah in the sense that it's been now, a commandment, natural, like breathing. And yes, the world, of course, will be absolutely one with that, and all the conditions will be perfect and no impediment and no choice anymore. Are we clear?
It's hard to learn to live without being selfish and
yeah, that's our struggle now.
I'm birching.
That's our struggle now. You're right. When Mashiach comes, the Yetzer Hara will no longer be. He'll be transformed into a Yetzer Tov. The ego will no longer be a resistant ego. It'll be a divine ego that expresses the I and the will of God. By the way, not by the way. Yes, by the way, it's not exactly the subject. A tzaddik lives that way now. Can you imagine? There's many levels to tzaddik, but I'm talking the complete tzaddik.
So I was just going to say that the Kohen Gadol during the time of the temple wore linen shatnez together, and he was the tzaddik gadol. So
that's a different.
It would be elevated to that level. So it would be as if we could wear that because it's no longer an avera. It's no longer something we have to worry about.
No? Actually, no. The law of shatnez will still apply, not in the temple, but everywhere else. Nice attempt, but it will apply everywhere else. The law's not going to change. So we have to deal with that. What happens? We haven't answered the question. What's going to happen to the poor fellow buried in shatnez? We will explain that in a second. But first, I want us to understand the core issue, the core resolution between this apparent contradiction. Mitzvahs, no. Halachas, yes. I hope now we've understood the distinction. The need to command, which implies separation, no separation. We're all going to be this absolute tzaddik. And we'll do it naturally and spontaneously and without even having to choose it. It'll just happen by itself, as it were, like breathing. We're clear? Now let's go. Yep, we're clear?
I can't see how a Jew can live without complaining.
That's why I told you, Hashem helped us, blessed us, that he gives us tzaddikim. And you can see this even at tzaddik now, then that's one day how we're all going to be. The tzaddik is only one complaint. Mashiach should come down, everybody should feel this. That's his only complaint. That your will should be the will of everyone. Okay, let's go further. But you understand, Ellen, but you understand what I'm saying? You're saying, wow, this is unbelievable. But you understand what I'm saying, right? The distinction you've got, yes? The resolution to the problem we have, correct? Yeah. Now, in the text. Okay, I just said it, so let's go to Valpizeh. I want you to look at 1, 2, 3, the fourth paragraph of chapter 4. Valpizeh, and having said what we did now, in explaining the distinction between commandment and halacha, right? We're clear? Commandment, if you're commanding, you're already implying separation. between the commander and the one who's commanded. That's no longer, so that's obsolete and over, but the halacha remains. So now we'll understand the contradiction in the words of Rabbi Yochanan. He says you can bury him in shrouds. And he said, why? Mitzvah is betelis la'asid love, not the halacha, the mitzvah. Even though that he learns out. Where do we know? He said this. We just quoted this. Where do we know Tchias HaMeisim in the Torah? We don't. He doesn't just teach us from the Torah. The dead will get up. The dead will get up and do mitzvahs because we'll give out truma to Aaron. So Rabbi Yochanan, you're contradicting yourself. No, is in the sinas truma. The fact the halacha of giving truma will be after the revival of the dead. But what's going to change? No one's going to have to be told to do it. We're free from mitzvahs means free from being commanded. In other words, free not to choose, but free from choice. That's what it means, free of mitzvahs. We're free from choice. I don't have to choose anymore. It's my natural, instinctual desire. In brackets, this is a freedom in the most virtuous sense. Not stripped away. Yeah, mitzvahs don't apply to you anymore. No, mitzvahs do. What are you free of? You're free of the need to tell you to do it. You're free of the choice. Then we won't need a commandment. No Jew will be independent from God. We'll all be thoroughly nullified to God and united and one with Him. One entity with Hashem. Now, what about the shrouds? The poor fellow is going to get up there. Gewalt! I'm wearing a linen garment with a thread of wool. Listen to this incredible answer. You can bury him in shrouds. Because when he'll get up, we won't have to tell him, you shouldn't be in shrouds. So what's going to happen? He won't remain in kilayim. The moment he gets up, what's going to happen? Boom! The woolen thread will just pop out spontaneously. You won't have to take it out. You don't have to tell him, you're in kilayim, take it off. You don't have to tell him. It will naturally, simply, in a world that is one with God's will, God doesn't want kilayim, there's no kilayim. So the second that the will of God is manifest, this is the ultimate, it's going to explain. The ultimate will of Hashem is manifest in the era of the revival of the dead. The world will, like breathing, naturally just respond to God's will. And the second before then, the thread could be there. Now it's Tchias HaMeisim. The thread just pops out and just boom, it's gone. Without the need to tell him, do it. The world will naturally, livingly respond to the will of God. Because there's no separation. On that day, God's kingdom is established on earth. God will be one and His name is one. Right now, we can't even say Hashem's name the way it's written as we're learning in the Maimon. Because He's not revealed. Then we will say Hashem's name as it's written because He'll be revealed. And that name of God is His essential name. Why will we be able to say it? Because that's going to be the reality. The reality is God's will and nothing else. Hashem doesn't want kilayim, boom, it just doesn't happen. So you don't have to worry. We can bury him in shrouds. While he's dead, there's no mitzvahs, and it's before Tchias HaMeisim. He's not transgressing anything because he's dead. But when he gets up, now he's got to do the mitzvahs. We don't have to tell him, don't have to tell the world. It's going to happen naturally. It'll just spring apart. Are we clear? Are we clear?
Are you saying that the fabrics themselves will separate, or the person wearing it will automatically do it?
Yes, the wool, miraculously, it'll be intolerable. It will be intolerable that a Yid is wearing a forbidden garment. The world cannot tolerate it because the world is one with Hashem's will, and therefore, like a opposite the magnet, that they just repel. It'll be unnatural. Anything that Hashem doesn't want is impossible to be. So it just will spring apart. That's what you're hearing. I'll be clear. Why it's okay to bury him in shrouds of wool and linen. While he's dead, no mitzvah, no problem. There's no mitzvah, I mean, in the mitzvah, the sense of he doesn't have to do anything. There's no mitzvahs. When he gets up and the halachas will apply again, not a problem. That instant, without him having to do anything, without a need for a commandment, the situation will not endure a millisecond longer. Are we clear or not? Are we clear the difference between how both things are true? Mitzvahs no longer, halachas forever. We're clear?
Very.
So when the fellow gets up in shrouds, there's no need for, wait a second, there's a mitzvah, there's a commandment that you're not to wear shrouds, this has got a shroud, I better take it off and pull it off. None of that. It's just, the linen itself, the world itself, it'll become like a living, breathing entity, as it were, that naturally expresses the animating presence and will of Hashem. There'll be nothing that could possibly happen, not even possible, contrary to his will. No need to command it, again, like breathing. It's just, you don't have to be told to breathe. It's life, and that's what kind of life is going to be. Life will be Hashem and his will. We're just beginning the subject, friends, which we're going to explore Shammai and Hillel and what happens in the future. Let's go a little bit further. Vav. He elaborates. Let's read together. Chapter 6. Everybody has it? A few more minutes we have. The taste of his beer, it's a further elucidation to the concept we're teaching now. How does a mudgesh, what we're saying is underscored by diuk, and I've been pointing this out already, but I want to see it now in the text. Look at the language. The base of Mamorim, the two statements, that on the surface, contradict. We have one statement, mitzvahs betelis lasid lavoi. Mitzvahs no longer will be in the future era. Statement one. Statement two, halacha shel Torah, the halachas of the Torah, einem betelin la'olam, are forever. On the surface, it's a contradiction with result. Mitzvahs l'Torah, what's it between saying mitzvahs or the halachas? Difference is, mitzvahs gidram, what does a commandment mean? Commandment means you are told how to conduct yourself in the world. And if you wouldn't be told to do it, you wouldn't do it. You wouldn't even know. You have to be told. So the need to be told, no longer. The mitzvah, the commandment. And I said before, a commandment implies also, till then, a choice. I could do or not do. That's going to be over. No choice anymore. We'll be free not to choose. That's now, we're free to choose. Then we'll be free from choosing. It's the ultimate freedom. Freedom from choice. We'll naturally observe it. We'll be one with Hashem. So mitzvahs in the classic sense, commandments, freedom to choose. There's a person, there's a world. Mitzvahs, and Hashem says that here's commandments. Commandments, how you should conduct yourself, how the world should be. Skip the square brackets. The Torah itself, the actual will of God. Look at the quote here. It's a hidden treasure and exists. Understand, friends. Before the world was created, Hashem already conceived of mitzvahs. The world didn't even exist. And not that he conceived of them, when I'll create a world, I'm going to tell them to put on tefillin and keep Shabbos. That's not what we mean. When Hashem conceives of the mitzvahs, it means this, and try and understand this. Hashem says, I want to express myself. I want to reveal myself to my children. And I'm choosing to reveal myself 613 ways. That's what mitzvahs are. Divine revelation. And that existed even before creation. God reveals himself 613 ways. before there's a world, before there's anything. When Tchias HaMeisim comes about, the final perfect world, we're going to experience what these mitzvahs are at their source. Not simply telling me how I should behave. And I got a choice to listen or not. It's Him. It's a revelation of Him, the expressions of Him. And then through all the work we've done for these thousands of years in working on ourselves and choosing and struggling with the Yetzer Hara and our ego and complaining and all the things Alan said before, finally overcome it, transformed it. Now we're ready to experience the mitzvahs as what they really are, just purely Him. So in other words, the law to be explored in the next week. The lower level of mitzvahs is do this to fix the world. That's the external dimension of mitzvahs. External, internal. External is it's a commandment. It's a world that is unrefined, that needs lots of fixing. And these are the laws, the way you're going to do it. You don't kill, you don't steal, you put on tefillin, you keep Shabbos, keep kosher. Tikkun olam. You fix the world. And you got a choice, yes to or not to, and it's going to be very difficult, but you got to do it and you will do it, etc. That's the external dimension. The external dimension of the mitzvahs is commandments to a world that doesn't know how to redeem itself. It doesn't want to, and there's these commandments, it would accept the yoke of heaven, and in the end, good will prevail. That's the external dimension that is temporary and over. What's left at the end? Not fix the world with a mitzvah. The mitzvah is me, says Hashem. I've invested myself in tefillin and in Shabbos and in mikveh, and when you do that, you're just experiencing me. We're hugging closer and closer. We're not fixing, it's fixed already, done. So the mitzvah component, the fixing, the tikkun, over. But the pure Torah, which precedes creation, the halacha, the will, which precedes creation, which is about what? The way God has chosen to express Himself, that will be forever, and we'll feel that expression, that embrace 613 ways, and all of the myriads of details of that. That remains eternal. The fixing over, tikkun over, that's the mitzvah component, the commandment, which means there's three things: God, me, and the commandment. No three things anymore. We're one. So what are the mitzvahs now? What are we fixing now? Ain't fixing nothing. You're going to feel me. That's what these mitzvahs are. It's just the connection to me in the deepest way. All right, friends? Somewhat clear. But still many questions to answer. We have to answer. We answered about the shatnas. We just said, boom, it's just not going to happen then. Naturally, the world's, it's very similar to our sages say like this. Tchias HaMeisim, this is a famous quote from the Midrash. It's a Shabbos. And a person's going to want to, in theory, it would never happen, but a person would want to pick a fig, a fruit off a tree. And the tree will say, it's Shabbos. No one's going to want to do it. But the point is that the world will kind of express the will of God. It just won't allow anything other than God's will, feeling so close and one with Him. So our sages are really saying that in a very simple way. The tree will say Shabbos. What are you doing? It's only theory because no one's going to want to. We'll also be totally one with God. But our sages are expressing how the world will naturally express Hashem's presence so that it's impossible to do contrary to His will. Impossible. So a woolen garment on a living Jew is an impossible reality. A woolen linen, I mean. So what's going to happen to that thread of linen? It just expels. Naturally pops out, gone. And he gets up in linen, which is very nice. Very fashionable. Okay, but we still have to explain Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel and the change of the halacha and incredible insights coming, friends. Awesome insights. Now, I want to just conclude. Why are you learning this? When it happens, it happens. We have to know. We're curious. What's going to be? Hashem wants us to know what's going to happen because it's the truth now. It's the truth now. At the depth, which means, why should I be putting on my tefillin now? What's the depth of it? In order to gain reward, because to be observant, it should go beyond the gender. This moment is a living relationship with Hashem. We have to know this. This tefillin we're about to put on, if you didn't, or you did, or tomorrow, or the bracha you're going to make over the food you're going to eat, and the tzitzit that you're wearing, and to be nice to your wife and children. They're all beautiful things, which for the human being, why do we do it? Because, no, I'm growing, there's a gain, there's an agenda. I'm fixing me, the world, perfecting. It's all true. But at the depth of it, that moment is everything. It's a deep, intimate connection with Hashem. It's beyond fixing. It's beyond a piece of a puzzle that we're putting together. And one day it's going to be all be good. That's true. But in essence, it's all now. That's where we're learning this. Then we'll really experience it. Everybody forever. The living, eternal relationship with Hashem through the observance, not in the classic, I'm going to do, but the natural, spontaneous observance of all of his laws. Without choosing, without struggling, freedom from choice. Okay, friends, I hope we're getting a sense of this. It is beautiful. This is the teachings of Mashiach, friends. This is what it means. We're learning the depth of mitzvahs, what it's all about. And we're going to address much more detail and nuance. It becomes clearer and clearer. Okay, have a wonderful day. Yud Aleph Shvat today is the day. It's the 70 years when the Rebbe formally accepted the Nesius last night at 10 o'clock, 10:40, the Maimer. I hope you guys saw last night the beautiful Fabrengen. If you didn't, watch it on YouTube, the interview with the three Shluchim, China, and in British Columbia, and in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It was so beautiful to hear, to see them, to hear what they have to say, to be inspired by them. So please watch it. And all the brachas we're all getting, the bottom line is to implement them in our lives and to live every moment to the fullest, which means in connection to Hashem, revealing His will and our will are one. Not I'm doing His will. It's one will, His will. That's what's going to be. But we have to start to appreciate that and live that to whatever degree we can, even now in the last moments before Mashiach comes. Have a wonderful day, friends.
Excellent class,
Rabbi.
Rabbi.
Shavua Tov, everyone.
Shavua Tov. Dave?
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Excellent class.
Yeah, be well.
Right, be well. Right.